it's Hipster GW. So I was playing Schedule 1, and I realized whenever you are interacting with somebody, you get the E to talk to icon, which is very common in video games. It's not an uncommon occurrence, but they don't have, even though like the characters will look at you whenever you're walking around them, they won't actually turn around and interact with you. So there's no way to interact with somebody when they're not looking at you, right? So you can look at them, but you both have to be looking at each other in order to interact with them. And I was wondering, how would I do this in Unreal Engine? And it turns out it's actually pretty simple. So I've already built out part of a project that's going to give us this icon and give us some characters and stuff. So I'm just going to use the default Unreal Engine first person project. But I just wanted to show the logic of actually making sure that both you're facing a character, but also that that character is facing you. So let's look into it. Okay, so here I am in a first-person default map. I added quite a bit to it because I was trying to just replicate some Schedule 1-ness to an actual video game. So we're going to ignore that portion for now, but I'm just dealing with some of the default mannequin characters that you have here. And you see I have this character named Molly, and you can press E to interact. I don't have anything actually tied to the E button quite yet. But the one thing that I wanted to point out is you can't actually interact with them, or you don't get that E to interact whenever they're not facing you. So it's actually pretty easy to replicate. Now in this video, I'm not going to set up any of the UI with you, and I'm not going to set up any of the look at components with you. I'll show briefly how it works here, but I mainly just wanted to go in depth about the actual math behind figuring out if this character is looking at you as well. So entirely for context, I'm not going to go into depth about the logic of the look at component on my first person character, but I'm just using the default first person character that comes with the first person template. And I have this component here. It's an actor component called look at component. Basically, this is just running on tick, a function that I call look at tick. This essentially just runs a line trace on tick every frame. So again, if you don't want to do it on tick, you don't have to do it on tick. There's nothing preventing you from doing it. Use all of these principles that I'm teaching you to your own ends. Do it however you want. No, there's no Unreal Engine police out there yet, or there are, then they haven't visited me, unfortunately. So essentially I get the forward vector from the camera. We go out, I think it's like 500 units, and we get a line trace. Yeah, it's 500 units. We get a line trace up to 500 units. We break it. We see if the actor is interactable. I use tags on all the actors that I want to interact with. We do some other logic that isn't super efficient. Don't worry about the the spaghetti code right here. I know it looks really ugly. This is really what I wanted to show off in this video is I have a function here called is character facing you. Then it's true or false Boolean coming out. And this is what I use in another function I call update look at info, which essentially controls whether or not the UI underneath the character is saying talk or not talk, right? So press E to talk or press E to interact. Don't press E to interact. I didn't do it where you actually have the UI on the character itself. The logic would essentially be the same. You just wouldn't change the UI update on the actual like player UI. You would do it on the UI widget that exists within the character themselves. Regardless, the logic behind it has nothing to do with the UI itself, and it all has to do with what direction is the character's forward vector and how close or what angle are you at essentially with this character's forward vector. Now, I don't know hardly anything about game math. It's something that eventually I want to go really into depth on, but inside my is character facing you function, this is where all the magic happens. Now, I had to do a little bit of ChatGPT help and a little bit of some YouTube help to actually figure this out. But hopefully, if you don't understand video game math like myself and you don't know how to do it right off the bat, you just take this code and essentially just use it for your own purposes. Okay, so here inside the is character facing you function, we are bringing in the character. Again, this is the character that we want to look at. So over here we have Molly, right? So again, we cross over here. We can talk to Molly. We can't talk to Molly. Also, Molly's like isn't that slang for some sort of drug? Yeah, that was intentional. Let's pretend that I'm hilarious and that was intentional. And then we have Frank, right? So we have this, we're not looking at Frank, or I'm sorry, Frank isn't looking at us. No, Frank is looking at us, and then it appears. And so we're bringing in that character, and we're outputting the Boolean, whether or not they're looking at us. Now, essentially what we want, there's a dangling node, sorry about that. Essentially what we want is to know if it's greater than or less than a certain number. This 0.35 number is just a number that I messed with to know that it's pretty close to the characters facing you, right? So the point of this is essentially we don't want to force the player to be 100% exactly in line with the forward vector of this person, right? We want to give them a little bit of wiggle room, but not too much. So that number, that 0.35, you can mess with. So if it was 0.55, here, let's just do it now. Let's just say 0.55. If it's 0.55, then you're gonna have more wiggle room, right? It's not that much more. Let's do like 0.95. Oh, you have less wiggle room. Okay, so it's actually inverse. So if we did like 145, sure, that's just a random number. I can't remember. Okay, so if you have a lower number, you got more wiggle room. So I don't know. I did it enough where I just found out that 0.35 seemed like a good amount for my game. I would mess around with this. And then, of course, this is considered what they call in coding a magic number. So it's just a dangling arbitrary number. You would want to save this to a variable or something. So don't take this part as good code necessarily. But how we actually see if this is greater than or less than is by running in two vectors into a dot product. I don't understand vector math. I tried pre-calculus for a couple of days in high school, and then I ended up quitting, and I went to be a teacher's assistant for my media teacher where I did short films. So I didn't go very far in math. So I do not understand what a dot product is enough. This is game math. You can see here, it actually has a link, mathworld.wolfram.com/dotproduct.html. I'm assuming it's going to explain more about what a dot product is. This is game math. If you ever went in depth into game math, you probably have a better understanding about it than I do, because I really have none. But it takes in two vectors, and then it returns this float, is the dot product. Now, the two vectors that we want, one is just simply the forward vector from the character. So the character that we're looking at, their forward vector exists in space, essentially in the middle of the character, or wherever the center is technically, and then it just points forward. Right, so that's what the forward vector is. So we have that going into the bottom part of the dot product node. Now the top part that we want is essentially taking the first person character, right? So that's just the player character here, getting their actor location in the world, and essentially subtracting from that the location of the actor that we're actually trying to look at. So we have this, and again, we're trying to look at them. So once we subtract our location, and of course, if you wanted to do a third-person game, you would use your third-person character or whatever here. You could even turn this. You could even turn this into a variable. Would probably be a better way to create this function. But we subtract from that the location of the character that we're bringing in. We put it into this normalize node. Now, if we want to find that, we find a normalize node. And this one is just the normalize vector node. So again, you take in a vector that you take from subtracting these two vectors, and then you have this tolerance here. I don't understand nearly enough what the normalize node does or what the tolerance actual variable does. I've always just left it at this default 0.0001, and then we send it to our dot product node. Now again, there are going to be multiple dot product nodes. The one that you want is just simply this vector one, not vector 2D or vector 4. We're just going to use this vector dot product under the math section. And again, it takes in those two vectors and it returns that. And essentially outside of that, we're going to get this Boolean. And that Boolean is going to let us know if we're facing or if the character is facing us or not. So you could use this logic and extrapolate it to whatever you wanted to do in your product. You could do it to your heart's content. I just thought it was cool. I had no idea how to do it. And I figured out how to do it, and I just figured that I would share. So let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if explaining any of the other code would be helpful to you as well. I think it would be cool to do more videos on creating a Schedule 1-like type game, because it gives you a ton of opportunities to actually figure out how to do some just basic stuff that's just slightly above absolute simple beginner level logic in code. So let me know what you thought about this and if it's helpful at all, and I'll see you on the next one. See ya.